I really hesitated and debated on whether I should put this video out or not. Um, Number one, it can be a triggering topic. Number two, it's also a topic that's been extremely overdone. However, I do think that I have some value to add to the topic, especially in terms of astrology. And since this is a love and astrology series, I figured why not? But when it comes to the topic of twin flames, soulmates, karmics, I think we've collectively lost the plot. I think that much like everything else in society that's backed by consumerism, if it can fit into a very marketable box, then society will market the fuck out of it. And it becomes something that becomes so far from not only what it is, but what it was intended to be. So, in this video, I want to talk about twin flames, soulmates, karmic relationships, destiny, and all of those things, and not from a lens of teaching you what astrology has to say about it. This is more so just a chat on sort of the spiritual element of these things and what they mean, how to interpret them, or maybe even how to look at them. Now, I preface this video by saying I clearly, if you've been watching my videos, I'm sure you've memorized my intro by now. I am a professional astrologer, but at the end of the day, I'm also just a regular person on the internet. I'm not a relationship expert. I never hold myself out to be. When I do coach people in the realm of relationships, it's just from my knowledge of astrology and just what I've lived in life, right? Much like anyone else does. So feel free to take this with a grain of salt. Feel free to feel however you want to feel. Because the one thing that I will say about all of these things is that you have to figure out what works for you, what your story is, how you are designed. We're constantly fed narratives, we are constantly being force fed stories that we feel the need to fit into. When oftentimes, especially when you start looking at people's charts, that's definitely not the case. So I preface this video by saying, I'm just a stranger on the internet. You can feel free to agree or disagree. I won't be mad at either. All right. So I hate the term twin flame. And this is coming from someone who was very much entrenched in twin flame ideology, particularly around 2014, 2015. When I first discovered what a twin flame was, I was already in the relationship that I guess you would classify as a twin flame relationship. And I stumbled onto that phrase, and much like everyone else, I fell down that rabbit hole of looking for signs and validation and confirmation. Is this my twin flame? Is it not? And then I think, so when it comes to twin flames, I think there's this cycle that many people encounter, that many people experience. You may be in the relationship already, you learn about it, and then you're trying to make your relationship fit into this paradigm. It doesn't fit into the paradigm. You become disillusioned with twin flames, and then you just drop the whole thing. And then perhaps you become bitter about it, or you say that twin flames don't exist. And I get it, because 'cause I've been there. I've been there personally, right? But I will say this in retrospect, knowing what I know, knowing what I've experienced, and just being tapped into spirituality in the way that I'm tapped in, it's not so black and white. It's not so cookie cutter. And by it not being cookie cutter, I mean the concept of twin flames, whether they exist, whether they don't, whether you've been in a twin flame relationship or not. I want you to understand that life is very individualized. Yes, there are things that many of us experience together, simultaneously, or in the same way, but it doesn't mean that that is the default. And I say that to say because the whole twin flame landscape has become so messy. It's become so bastardized. It's become so ugh. But if you're asking if I think the concept exists, I do, but definitely not in the way I thought it did in the past, and definitely not in the way that I think that people still talk about it today. I think that trying to label relationships as twin flame, soulmate, karmic, it's not inherently bad. I just think it limits the entire experience. At the core of everything, I believe that relationships are literally a mirror. Not all relationships are created equally. Um, you'll have relationships that are particularly profound in your life, and you'll have a fling that means absolutely nothing. And you don't even need to look into it any further. I don't think that every single relationship has this profound message to it. Some people you literally just meet by happenstance. Some people you literally just fuck on the first night and that's it. Like, that's the extent of the story. And at the beginning of time, when everyone sat down and contracted how they were going to experience life together and what roles they were going to play in each other's lives, some people were like, yes, I'm here to be the catalyst to your spiritual awakening. And then someone else raised their hand and say, hey, I'm going to sleep with you one night in October 1983, and then I'm never going to see you again, but that night is going to be bomb, right? Like, it's going to be great. It can run the gamut, and only you know this. That's why at the core of all of this, before we start talking about, is this person a soulmate, twin flame, whatever, who are you? Who are you designed to be? What do you know to be certain in your life? That's the core question. So when it comes to these relationships, you have to be able to classify them for yourself. Is information that's out there helpful? Absolutely. It gives you a framework, it gives you a starting point, it can give you a foundation, but it doesn't have to be your definition. Now, some people can define twin flames as divine partnerships. You can call it whatever you want to call it. But the truth still remains that there are profound relationships in our lives that are here for a particular reason. Now, some of those reasons could be a catalyst. In my experience, I believe that the twin flame relationship I was in was to help bring about my spiritual gifts. Because a lot of weird shit was happening in that relationship in terms of telepathy, um, remote viewing, um, astral projection, my psychic abilities. All of these I experienced in that relationship. And that could literally be the purpose of it. But the problem is that society fills this narrative, and this narrative that's very marketable, right? That could be very consumer based. That they're supposed to be this happy ending, this person you're supposed to spend your life with, your other half, the person who makes you whole. Are those things possible? Absolutely. But I'm going to tell you a truth that I know, especially because I've examined so many natal charts. Not everyone's meant for that happy ending. Not everyone's meant to be married. Not everyone's meant to have kids. Not everyone's meant to be partnered in this lifetime. And that's just the reality. It's not to say that if you want those things, that maybe you can't have them. Maybe you just can't have them in the way that society is conditioning you to think that you need to have them. So think about that. When we talk about twin flames, when we talk about soulmates and all of these things, I personally have kind of dropped the labels because I think that labels can be inherently misleading. And it brings me to a somewhat controversial point. Now, for a while, especially when I was entrenched in the whole twin flame thing, there was a whole thing about, well, my twin flame is married to someone else. My twin flame is in a marriage right now. And, people, that's a very polarizing thing because marriage is sacred. And, So many people would say, especially those who were of the religious sect, right? Who were looking at this spirituality, thinking it's, not of God to begin with, but then you're telling me that your twin flame is actually married to someone else? Like that's on some Jezebel shit. That's on some demonic shit, right? And, it's bringing up feelings of guilt, feelings of so many different feelings, because that's a very convoluted and very polarizing concept within this twin flame paradigm, right? And I bring this up in terms of labels because you can put a silk hat on a pig, it's still a pig. What do I mean by that? And I want you to listen to me so clearly, and I want you to turn your discernment up. You don't have to agree with me, but just follow, if you will. Marriage is sacred, but not all marriages are sacred. Some of y'all get into marriages with ulterior motives, low vibrational motives. Yet, because marriage is sacred, now because you have the marriage, you think your marriage is sacred. Baby, it's not. You can debate me if you want. Not all marriages are sacred. Now, does that mean that your partner could be married to someone else? Could be. Never put limits on how God works. If your marriage is truly sacred, then yeah, that will be impenetrable. But unless you've created a sacred container for your marriage, baby girl or baby boy, just because you slap marriage on a relationship does not make it sacred. Now, does that give you the right to cheat? Absolutely not. I'm not saying that at all. I'm not co-signing cheating. I'm not co-signing adultery. I'm not co-signing betrayal. This is where knowing yourself becomes crucial. Knowing your motives, knowing why you get into shit. Because here's the thing. You can be married, you can get into a marriage, yet your motives behind that marriage may not become apparent to you for a while unless you do the inner work and you realize, hey, I got into this for this reason. That's where you have marriages that are loveless, marriages with no sort of fortification, marriages that are not sacred, right? Take that information and do with it as you will, okay? But that's why I think labels are misleading. Now, does that mean that everyone's twin flame is married? Absolutely not. Does it mean that maybe your twin flame is married? If you believe in twin flames, if you believe in divine partnerships, whatever it is, could be. But here's the thing. And I said, I don't condone cheating. I don't condone betrayal. What I do condone is knowing yourself, knowing your relationships, and having the hard conversations. Look, nobody benefits when both people in the relationship are miserable or they're not on the same accord, whether you're married or not. And I want to put this out there. I'm talking to you as someone who is not married and I've never been married. I know what I want my marriage to look like. I know what God tells me about marriage, and that is how I'm speaking to you, but you can feel 100% free to disagree with me. But the one thing I've seen and understood because I know astrology is that everyone and every situation is individualized and it's different. That's why labels are so misleading because what one person experiences, another person may not. Two people can experience the same thing in two completely different ways. You have to know yourself. And when we're talking about relationships, you need to know yourself before you invite somebody else to the party. And communication is key. Having the hard conversations, being emotionally vulnerable, understanding the type of relationship you want to have. Not everybody wants a relationship where they bare their soul. Some people literally just want a companion. That's okay. But you have to be honest with yourself and you have to be honest with the other person. Communication is key. And I'm actually going to do a video on communication in a little bit. So subscribe, set notifications so you know when that drops. But it's all about alignment. That's why I love astrology so much, because it tells you about you, what works for you. Some people thrive in polyamory. Real talk. Society will tell you it's whatever. Some people, that is how they are designed. And maybe their soulmate is within a throuple. But that's up to them. That's for them to know and for them to decide. That's why a lot of the rhetoric out there when it comes to twin flames and stuff is so jacked up. So I think what I'm trying to say is you have to understand what works for you and define these relationships as they align for you. And be honest with yourself and be honest with people. So Brian McKnight is a very controversial figure right now, if you didn't know. I watched an interview of his the other day and it hit home on something that is very true, but a very harsh truth. So, if you didn't know this or not, Brian McKnight has been in the news lately because people think that he's a trifling motherfucker. He was married before to a Black woman, had children with her, and then subsequently his marriage fell apart. And then he subsequently married a woman who is not Black. Okay. And there has been talk of him disowning his previous children. He had a child with the non-Black woman and gave the child his name, like gave it Junior. And he had a very estranged relationship with his two prior sons, and one of his sons actually passed away. And when he passed away, it was like Brian McKnight had disowned them and everything. And so I really wanted to hear this interview because I wanted to hear it from his mouth. Like what was going on? And he said something that kind of stung, but was his truth. And he said he was not in love with his first wife. They actually married because they both came from a religious background and she had gotten pregnant. Now, he did for his sons. Now this is up for debate because I don't know the man personally. I'm just relaying what he said. He did for his prior sons. He helped them out. He said he helped them out repeatedly. But he said because there was entitlement, because they were squandering what he gave them, he stopped giving. Now, whether that's right or wrong, I'm not here to debate. Again, I'm just relaying the story. But when he talks about his current wife, he said something that was also really profound and kind of a harsh truth, but in the extreme. He said, she is the woman, like when I would think about the woman that I want, if I could draw her, that would be the woman I married right now. He was ultra in love with her. And he said, my previous children were not conceived of love. My last child was. And that can be such a harsh thing to hear, but it is his truth. And let's be real, so many people have children that they didn't want, that they didn't anticipate. And now you have to love them. Let's say this, you have to take care of children. Children are your responsibility. Love is different. Love is a choice. Love is a connection. And there are some people who are not connected to their children. And there's no shame in that, at least from my perspective. Don't fake the funk. Again, you could put a silk hat on a pig, but it's still a pig, right? And as harsh as that may be, nobody wants to hear, oh, well, I married you, but I didn't love you. I didn't conceive our children from love. But what if that was the truth? What if that was the truth that you didn't want to admit to yourself? What if that was the truth that you didn't want to accept that was being told to you? That creates a whole bunch of issues down the line where you can have a situation such as the one I'm describing with Brian McKnight. Now, I'm not here to judge. I'm not here to say whether it's right or wrong. I'm using it to demonstrate a point that labels can be misleading. Just because you label something doesn't mean that it is inherently that thing. And sort of the last thing I'll say on this topic is one of the reasons why I debated even putting this topic out was because I didn't want it to be a video where I'm talking about, things in your natal chart or things in synastry charts that can denote a twin flame relationship or a soulmate relationship. You will know what those are. It is up to you to discern these things. And that is so fundamental because you have to decide what these things are in their life, if they exist in your life, and if they do, how. That's a very personal thing. You can look at your chart for guidance. You can understand the synastry between you and someone else and use it as confirmation. But I will never sit here and say, this is what this is, it means you're twin flames. This is what this is, it means you're soulmates. Every relationship has a purpose. Like I said before, someone could be the catalyst to your spiritual awakening. Other people could just be a really great night once in a lifetime. It can run the gamut and only you can decide that. So when it comes to twin flames, soulmates, even karmics, I hate the fact that within this twin flame paradigm, people label karmics as the other woman. Let's be real. That's what people label it as. Oh, she's just the karmic. She's just the stepping stone. I'm the real deal. Baby girl, maybe you're not. You may not be. But whether that person is a stepping stone or not, or a karmic, maybe they are here to bring that person something, to teach them something. Don't just downplay that. Don't fall into the societal paradigms. Again, labels can be seriously misleading. So, when it comes to this topic, it bears mentioning that it requires a lot of reflection, self reflection, and just reflection on the relationships. Relationships, especially when we're talking about romantic relationships, they're a very private thing. And correct me if I'm wrong, this is just my personal preference, but they should remain private to a certain extent. I'm not saying hide the person that you're with because obviously that can lead to a lot of issues in and of itself. But the issues, especially if you want to create a meaningful bond with someone, there's a certain amount of privacy, right? And so it requires reflection. And so if you get anything from this video at all, and I hope that this made sense, this was a topic that didn't need to be taught and, let's consult the natal chart and do case studies. I mean, no, this is let's be real. Let's talk real between us. Um, it bears mentioning that it requires reflection, reflection on yourself, how you're designed, patterns that you experience in your relationships, the other person, communication. If anything, ask yourself, what did this connection awaken within me or teach me? What did it show me, either about myself or about the world? And even what did I want it to be? What did I think it was? Right? I didn't understand the full nature of my twin flame relationship until I was well out of it. And that's not to say that that's going to be the case for you. Could be, but could also not be. You may know certainly from day one, right? But the whole point is that all of this is individualized. Your natal chart can offer guidance, but it's not here to assess, okay, this is what it is. You decide what it is. So do that. So, if you want to begin by understanding yourself, I've got a whole bunch of stuff in the description box below. I've got a quiz. You can sign up for the blueprint, which is my natal chart reading, all of these things to help you understand you, because here is how I approach it. Even though I do synastry, even though I talk about relationships, the core of the foundation is you. Understanding you, understanding how you show up in relationships, what you even want in relationships. why you desire this, why you want that. It starts with you. And so that's where I come in to help. So if you're interested in any of that, it's linked in the description box below. I'm happy to have had this conversation with you. I hope that you appreciate it. I want to hear your thoughts, your commentary, your opinions, because everyone has something to add to this story, to this narrative, to this paradigm. It is not a neat box that everyone fits in. Define it for yourself and allow yourself to flourish in your own relationships. All right, my loves, that's all I got for you on this one. Tune in tomorrow. We're going to continue some great relationship conversations. The videos this week, we are in our last week of the 30-day Love and Astrology series. This week is going to be a little different. It's not so much teaching you astrology, it's real talk about relationships with an astrological twist. So if you're interested, definitely set notifications, subscribe, share, all of that good stuff. If you want more, if you want to continue the conversation further, join me over in Cosmic Collective. You already know the deal about that. The information is in the description box below. And I'll catch you in the next one. All right, my loves. Thanks so much for tuning in. And I'll see you in my next video. Take care.